This is an interesting thing to ask you guys to do, but I know we're capable of it with the technology. By a show of hands, who of those are people that have heard me speak before? See if I end up seeing that as everybody figures out how to do it. If you don't know who I am the author of the newly revised and updated Is This Thing On? A Friendly Guide to Everything Digital for Newbies, Technophobes, and the Kicking and Screaming. And you don't have to be a newbie or a technophobe to kick and scream. Specifically, what I want to talk to you today about is about social networking. And some of you may have already heard this, but I refer to social networking as the green beans on the internet. And what I mean by that is, you know what it's like when you pass a plate of food to your grandchild. And on the plate of food, there's a hamburger, there's mashed potatoes, and there's green beans. And they gobble up the hamburger and they gobble up the mashed potatoes, but they won't eat the green beans. And so you say to them, well, do you not like green beans? And they say, oh, no, I don't like green beans. And you say, have you ever tasted green beans? And that's when the truth comes out. And they tell you that they've actually never eaten green beans. And that's how I think some people feel about social networking. And I'm not here because I want to convince you that you need to join Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or any of the other social networking sites that are available to us. I'm here purely because I think it's important that you be able to articulate in a conversation what it is you do or don't find interesting about it, and to have some sort of a knowledge of why this groundswell is so enormous. I mean, the bottom line is there was a revolution named after it, so it's hard for us to avoid it. So what I want to do is I want to talk to you about some of the benefits, because why do something if it doesn't benefit you? And I'm going to talk about some of the precautions you can take to be as safe as you can be, and then I'm going to specifically walk you through Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn so you can sort of decide which one of them might work best for you. So let's flip to the next slide. No, that's not the way. How did I forget how to go to the next slide? There it is. I see. Oh, that technology. So here is my favorite slide I've ever put onto anything is, on the internet you can be anything you want. It's strange that so many people choose to be stupid. And I put this up because I think for a lot of us, we're afraid that somehow, because stupid people do stupid things on the internet, that we in turn are somehow going to be taken into that stupidity of what people do. And it's a little bit like blaming chocolate for you gaining weight. It's really not the chocolate's fault that you put it in your mouth. You're the one that put it in your mouth. So when it comes to social networking, I think we have to realize that it's not the social networking isn't the problem. It's that some people make really dumb decisions. It's so funny. I was, and again, I apologize if people already heard this, but it's to me the quintessential New York moment. I was walking down the street in Manhattan not so long ago, and a tourist came up to me and asked me if I could tell them where Carnegie Hall was. How do you get to Carnegie Hall, specifically, was what he said. And of course, that's a dream question, because the answer is practice, practice, practice. But in fact, that wasn't what he wanted to know. He wanted to know the directions to go to Carnegie Hall. So I pulled out my smartphone, and I showed him on my GPS how he could walk from where we were to Carnegie Hall. And he was super grateful. And he, as he walked away, he said, "Thank you so much. I hate those things." I thought, well, that's too bad. That's how I make a living. And I said, well, why do you hate those things? And he said, because every time I'm in the movies, somebody's telephone goes off. And boy, I get just as irritated by that as anybody else, along with the fact that my sister was hit by somebody who was texting on their iPhone. And luckily, she survived the accident, but not unscathed. So in the wrong hands, these devices can be dangerous. But that doesn't make you stupid. And it doesn't make you that you're going to do stupid things when you're using it. We are all digital immigrants, I'm assuming. I'm assuming everybody that's listening is 40 years old or older, which means we're digital immigrants. Digital natives are people under the age of 40, and half of them are under the age of 20, and their frontal lobe isn't fully developed, which means they're not making great decisions. You are smarter and wiser than those other people out there. So it's very important for us to sort of hang on to that information as we delve further into what it is we can do with social networking, and be sure that we don't have egg on our face or put pictures of ourselves up online just in towels. So what the F is Facebook? And of course, by that I mean fudge. We're going to talk about sort of how Facebook works and how you set up an account with Facebook. Facebook is a website that you go to, and essentially how you present yourself on Facebook is that it's like having a bulletin board that you carry around all day. And when you carry that bulletin board around, you're going to tell people what it is that you're doing, or what you're interested in, or what photographs you've taken. If we look on this slide, this is my Ask Abby Stokes Facebook page. So there's an opportunity on this page for me to share photographs with you, or share websites, or answer your questions, which is sort of the biggest motivation for me having the Facebook page. A lot of people will tell me when they are having a green beans moment with Facebook is they don't want to share anything with anybody else. They have no interest in sharing pictures. They have no interest in putting up questions. And I don't want you to lose sight of the fact that Facebook offers you many more opportunities for things that you can take advantage of that require no sharing of anything at all. So here we see these are just a sampling of the different pages on Facebook that I follow. Facebook essentially originally was about different people following each other, which means if I became your friend on Facebook, yet another moment, what I call a green beans moment, because friend is interpreted differently on Facebook than it is for us three-dimensionally. Friend on Facebook means somebody that you've given permission to look at what it is you share on Facebook, and you in turn reciprocally get permission. I may have made up that word, reciprocally. You get permission to see what they've shared on Facebook. Don't misunderstand. If you want to be on Facebook, you never have to have a single friend on Facebook. You never have to let a single person see anything on Facebook. You don't have to share anything on Facebook, because you could also use Facebook to see the pages of organizations that you're interested in. You'll notice on the slide in the upper right page, I say there's Cleveland, the PC user group in Greater Cleveland happens to be a page that I follow on Facebook. Toward a line to the left of that is I like bike riding, and in Lyme, Connecticut, where I grew up, there's a bike tour happening. So what it means is by joining their page, I get to see all of the updates about what's happening about the bike trip. With the Greater Cleveland PC user groups, I get the advantage of seeing when they have a discussion about a new software program coming down the pipeline or something that they want to alert you to. On the left-hand side, again, it says When I Am with Dad, and that's a page that a dear friend of mine who wrote a children's book, he's a single dad of 2 daughters, and so he has a page there about what it's like to be a single dad. So I'm showing this to you for those of you that haven't gotten on board with Facebook because you don't want to share anything and you're not interested in whether somebody's cat did another somersault off the bed this morning. I'm alerting you to the fact that you can actually use Facebook to find out about organizations or restaurants or clubs that you would be interested in. So it doesn't have to at all be sharing anything one-on-one with anyone. I think for a lot of people that they don't know that that's a possibility with Facebook. So it's good for you to sort of go through. If you don't have a Facebook account, you can always go on somebody else's account and ask them to look up different organizations that you're interested in, and then you can make an educated decision about whether the pages that you see would be something that you would find worthwhile. Like a lot of local restaurants offer discounts off of their Facebook page that you can't find anywhere else. But let's get to how you open up the account. If you don't have a Facebook account, essentially you're going to fill in a form like this online. You're going to have to give them an email address, and you're going to have to give them a password. Now, the email address, I always suggest that you should have at least two email addresses. One email address that you use exclusively for friends, family, and business associates, and one email address that you use when you're shopping online or joining a newsletter or doing something like social networking, because it is inevitable that emails are going to go, your email address is going to be released into the universe when you're joining something like a newsletter or Facebook, and you want to have it be that you can sort of differentiate which account gets more junk mail and which one doesn't. As far as the password is concerned, my website, I'll show this to you at the end, but AskAbbyStokes.com has just been revised, and there's a really handy free printable page there called, I think it's called Choosing a Safe Password. I'll show you where that is, but it's a really great description, if I may say it so myself, it's as though I didn't write it, of how to choose a memorable password that's distinctive to each website that you visit, which I think is part of what stymies people. So I'm showing you sort of a way to do that, and you can harness the information. But it's pretty simple. Just signing up on this page. Facebook wants you to be who you say you are. So you're not going to take on a false name here, and that does slightly defeat the purpose of it. If you want people to be able to find you, you want to be using a name that they will recognize. For example, one of the first times I used Facebook was when I was organizing my high school 30th reunion. And I got onto Facebook to see how many of the kids that I had graduated with, no longer kids now, were on Facebook. And I'm from a very small graduation class of about 110 students. And I actually found 75 of my classmates on Facebook, which made I created a Facebook page specifically for our reunion, and it became a great place for us to swap ideas about, should we have a band, should it be a DJ, how many nights should we have the party, that sort of thing. So I fell in love with it from that point of view because it was so efficient. I bring that up with you because it's interesting about the name you choose to put in here. If you have a maiden name and now you have a married name, and part of why you're interested in going on to Facebook is so that your older friends, the friends from long ago, can find you, you might want to choose to have it be that you put in your first name with your maiden name and your last name so that somebody can find you. That's up to you. But they don't respond well to you taking on fictitious identities. That's not what Facebook is about. So you'll fill out this page, and as far as your birthday is concerned, you do actually have to fill out the birthday because they want to see whether you're 18 years or older, but you don't have to display any of your birthday, or certainly you don't have to display the year of your birth. If you want to fudge that and not put in the actual year of your birth just because you don't feel like you want to fill it in, frankly, if you want to be male or female, up to your decision, you can do that. The important thing to do is to remember the lie that you've chosen. So certainly write it all down. So in case there's a chance that you need to sort of prove yourself to Facebook, you have down what your original answers were. So then on the next slide, you're going to fill out a profile if you choose to on Facebook. And you don't have to if you don't want to. You could just leave it alone that you put your name up there. But if you wanted to, you're going to give them your hometown, which may be how people find you, or you're going to give them the current place that you live, which may be how people find you. You can choose to put in where you've worked. You can choose to put in your college education, all of that stuff. It's up to you to decide how much you want to share based on how easily you want people to be able to find you. And let's talk about that for a second. The fact that somebody finds you on Facebook doesn't mean that you have to decide now to say yes to an invitation to be their quote-unquote friend on Facebook, right? You have no obligation to ever say yes to anyone you don't want to be friends on Facebook with. There's a woman in New York City who I have not liked for 30 years. Our paths cross all the time socially. I just don't like her. So I haven't invited her to my home. I haven't gone out to dinner with her. And I'm not saying yes to her on Facebook because I feel like Facebook is just an extension. I choose to have it be an extension of my life. And so on Facebook, I'm sharing photographs or chatting about something in the news, and I don't really want to chat with her three-dimensionally, so why would I say yes to her on Facebook? It's not a huge insult to just ignore someone who is asking you to be their friend on Facebook. You don't have to say yes to anybody if you don't want to. On the next page, it brings up this issue of where you are able to construct how you want Facebook to work for you. How do you want the privacy settings to be? And more importantly, who can contact you? We're going to talk about the privacy settings in a second, but you have a choice with Facebook about whether or not you get a notification. Do you get a notification every time somebody invites you to Facebook? Do you get a notification every time somebody says something and involves your name on Facebook? Do you get a notification every time somebody responds to something you put on Facebook? I personally don't want to ever hear from Facebook. I've got enough things happening in the inbox of my email that I want to have Facebook be available to me when I choose to go to Facebook, and I don't want to receive emails about Facebook. Now, my mother's different. My mother likes to get notices that friends of hers have put things on Facebook because that is a reminder to her to go look at it because she doesn't look at it every day. So the notifications are something you can decide how much contact you want from Facebook. You can have none. You could have total contact that they let you know everything, or you could have a little bit somewhere in between. And you could also choose to not have those emails, again, go to your primary email account. You get to tell them which email account you want to have those notifications go to. And I want to bring up another point that I think can sometimes make Facebook be the green beans on the internet, which is this time issue. I'm sure you know somebody or have heard of people who basically are on Facebook replacing their actual three-dimensional social lives. And I think that's a frightening concept, that something takes over your social life. It hasn't taken over their social lives. They have chosen to do Facebook instead. So I want to disempower social networking in a way, because you always have a choice about whether you do it at all and the terms by which you participate with it. So in this case, if you are somebody who thinks you might get sort of sucked into doing too much Facebook, a kitchen timer is your best friend. Go onto the internet, connect to Facebook, turn on your kitchen timer for 15 minutes, a half an hour, however long you want it to be, and as soon as the timer goes off, you shut out of Facebook and you go on your merry way. If you don't check Facebook every day or every week or every month, the world keeps on revolving just the way it was. Your life keeps on going. If somebody really wanted you to see something that they put on Facebook and you didn't make some kind of mention about it, they'll send you an email or they'll call you on the phone to let you know about it. So I don't want to have you be concerned about either the way Facebook is sort of getting you with emails or how much time you have to devote to it. But let's get to the notion of this privacy issue. I have sat in on seminars for 45 minutes where somebody's walked me through all of the intricate ways to make sure that you've set up the back end of Facebook, your account settings, so that you have it as private as you possibly can, or not, if you don't want privacy. And here's the thing. None of that is really very valuable. No offense to anybody who teaches that, but at the end of the day, what you can't stop somebody from doing on Facebook, even if it's somebody you have chosen to be friends with, and you only have a few friends on Facebook, so you're not putting information out there to a lot of people, what is to stop that one person from passing on what you put on Facebook? You can put a photograph on Facebook and 5 minutes later go, oh, you know what? I regret putting that picture up. So I'm going to take that photograph down. In that 5 minutes, somebody could have either taken a screenshot of that picture or forwarded it to somebody else who isn't a friend of yours on Facebook. So I have one rule of thumb when it comes to protecting yourself on Facebook. You can change the settings all you want, and I don't think it's a bad thing to do it. But you have to think of social networking, actually, you have to think of anything that you do in writing to someone else, whether it's an email, whether it's a text message, or whether it's something you're posting on a website. You have to think to yourself that when you do that, it is going out into the universe. No matter what your settings are, you cannot stop somebody from passing on the information if they choose to, even if they think it's harmless. It isn't necessarily a nefarious act on somebody's part. It could be that they think it's an adorable picture of you and you wish that you didn't have the love handles in the picture and you don't want it out there, but there it is and somebody passed it on. So the only way to be safe with social networking, or emails for that matter, or text messages, is to pass the front door test. And that means you ask yourself before you put anything in writing and send it on to somebody else, whether or not you would be comfortable with it on the outside of the front door to your home. Simple things. I sent an email to my mother a very, very long time ago. I believe it was over 12 years ago, criticizing my sister's interior design. Who thought that 12 years later, my mother, when I finally told her she had to clean up her inbox because she had 18,000 emails in it, who thought that when she was intending to send it to me because she thought it was so funny, she would accidentally, Freud is saying nothing happens by accident, she would accidentally send the email on to my sister. And so my sister got to see how snarky I was about her house over 12 years ago. She doesn't even live there anymore, and she was still mad at me about it. So we just can't control other people's behavior with what information you've given them, whether it's a photograph or whether it's text. I'm very careful. If I'm going away for an extended vacation, I don't put pictures of my vacation up on Facebook at the beginning of the vacation and say, gosh, I can't wait for 2 more weeks of sunsets in Hawaii, and put it on the outside of the front door of my apartment in New York City. That would be crazy. So I'm very careful about it, and I'm sure I'm still, careless at different points. So the easiest thing for you to do, I don't say any of this to make you nervous. I say it to you to empower you. It's not about making you frightened. It's about having you can take control of your technology and of social networking the same way you take control of the front door to your home and your telephone, right? You are in control of who comes in and out of your house. You're in control of what you say to people, whether it's face-to-face on the telephone. And it is no different when you're using social networking. I want you to always think to yourself the same way you would I say that on the phone. And in this case, it's more trackable because, in fact, you're writing it down. So your security is about you being the first line of defense for your security and privacy when it comes to Facebook. So we're going to look for a second. For those of you that have never seen Facebook before, this is a typical Facebook page. Sort of running down the center there where you see that it says Sherry Slayton, that's my sister-in-law. And what it is, below that, that's called the news feed. Some people call it their wall, but it's really called the news feed. That news feed will show you what each person you have chosen to be friends on Facebook with or to share information with on Facebook. It puts up there what each person has shared of late. It can either be chronological or it can be what's getting the most traffic, whichever way you want to do it. But that's where you look to see where there are updates. On the right-hand sidebar, you see where it says Your Pages and Abby Stokes. Below that, it's usually advertisements or recent posts. I don't even look at the right-hand sidebar. I find the right-hand sidebar to be kind of tiresome. On the left-hand side, though, is where you're able to see private messages that are sent to you, or you're able to see events that you're invited to, or other pages that you participate in. And let's go back to the messages for a second, because I think that's important. I have a lot of people say to me, well, I want to send somebody an email. Should I email them on Facebook or should I email them to their inbox? This is my personal choice. I don't want to have to look at Twitter for a private message and at Facebook for a private message and at LinkedIn for a private message. I want to just look at my email. I've got enough things going on. I don't want to have to go all over the place. So when it comes to a private message, I'd rather not have somebody send me a message through Facebook. I'd rather have them send me an email, but sometimes they don't have an email address for you. They didn't find it on their Facebook page. So sometimes you do get messages there, and that's perfectly fine. But for me, when I answer them, I usually answer by saying, can you please email me at my email account? That's totally your personal choice. But don't be mistaken, and this is where people get into hot water, is where it says update status, add photos, create new photo album, and below that it says what's on your mind. That is where you type in what's on your mind. And it could be that it's a recipe, it could be a photograph, it could be a website. What you don't want to put there is what happened recently to a friend of mine, smart guy, in his 50s, businessman. What he typed in was, to a woman that he's about to go on a date with the next day. He typed in her name so she would see it. And then he said, I can't wait for our date tomorrow night. Unfortunately, the woman that he went on the date with the night before that was on Facebook. I believe he thought he was sending a private message, and he didn't understand how it works. And so he put his message out into the universe, but specific to this woman. This other woman who'd gone out with him said, I can't believe you're going out with somebody else. We had such a great time. And I'm thinking, gosh, they're both completely humiliating themselves. So I got on the good old-fashioned telephone, and I called Ian, and I said, Ian, everyone can see what you're typing. And he had no idea. He thought if he put in somebody's name that it would be going to her exclusively. So I think it's not an uncommon mistake. So you want to be super careful to know messages in the left-hand sidebar are private messages, where something you put on the news feed in the center is being seen by all of your friends and potentially the entire world. That's how you want to sort of filter that. Some people have said to me, you know, what happens if I post something and I decide that I want to change it or I want to delete it? This next slide shows you in the top right corner, above that box, that little window that opened up, is a down arrow. You don't see that down arrow unless you move your mouse over there, and that down arrow opens up an advanced menu, like what we're seeing right here, that allows you to go back and edit your post. If you suddenly see a typo or if you changed your mind about what you want to say, that's where you can edit your post. You also could add a location, you could hide it, or most importantly, down at the bottom, it gives you the opportunity to delete it if you want to. But remember, just because you delete the post after you do it doesn't mean it wasn't seen by people. So just be aware of that. You know, you're better to not put something up than put it up and have remorse and delete it. On the next slide, and this might be the most important thing for you to see, I've often said to people, being on Facebook is a little bit like being at a dinner party, where sometimes you're sitting next to somebody who's scintillating. Everything they say is interesting. You hope you get to see them again. And then the person on your other side, you don't want them to choke on a chicken bone, but you'd really rather they stop talking. Sorry, there's a bunch of motorcycles. You're hearing New York City, it's finest. I don't know if you can hear this, but there are motorcycles going down 14th Street behind me. So what happens if you say yes to somebody on Facebook, which means they can see what you're putting up and you can see what they're putting up, and then you realize, oh, for heaven's sake, I am so tired of seeing the same message about their cat doing somersaults or, you know, their hay fever or whatever it is they're sharing. Now, I like Robin. She posts very interesting things. It was not picking on her that I did this, but I wanted to show you that same right arrow, that down arrow to the right side. If you're looking at a post from somebody else, a different menu opens up. So let's go back for a second. That down arrow is for a post that I've put up. So the actions that I can take are different in the menu than when you look at the actions here. So here, the down arrow is letting me decide, oh, geez, I want to unfollow Robin, which means I'm not unfriending her. I'm unfollowing her. So she will still be my friend on Facebook. She won't think that I've unfollowed her. She'll never know that I've done it. I just don't want to see any posts by her. So if I want to see anything more about Robin, I can always go to her page and I can see her photographs and I can see what she said, but maybe I just don't want to have her sharing on my newsfeed anymore. I would click on unfollow to do that. If you're getting a lot of gaming posts or things like that, that's what the first option is. I don't want to see this, and that means that Facebook will actually do the mathematics there so you see less posts like the one you're talking about. Later down, when you see report post, that's if somebody's really put something bad on Facebook and you want to report it to the powers that be, that either it's spam or it's a lie or it's something about you or something untrue that shouldn't be there. That's when you're going to report it, and that's going directly to Facebook's administrative offices, and then they'll take care of it. I'm going to pause to take a sip of water right now to open this up for you guys to type in any questions that you might have about Facebook, because the next thing I want to talk about is Twitter. So were there any questions that anybody had about Facebook that you wanted to share before we go on? I'm not seeing anybody typing. Well, if you don't have any questions now, and you decide after we get off of this that you do have some questions, don't hesitate to email me. I'm Abby at AskAbbyStokes.com, or you can go to my website. I am super available for you with any questions that you might have about it. So let's talk now about Twitter. The differences between Facebook and Twitter. And if we had a show of hands here, I would wager that probably at least half of you are on Facebook. And I would bet that that number cuts down by another half if we're asking about who's on Twitter. Twitter is essentially different than Facebook in a couple of ways. One way is You can be anyone you want to be on Twitter. It's not about you using your real name. It's not about you even using a name that is a human's name. You could use the name Yellow Bird if you wanted to on Twitter. You don't have to have it be that it's you. In this case, you're seeing at the top of the page, I have a Twitter page, and I am Abby Stokes because I want people to see me and find me because that's part of my business. The other part of Twitter that's important, so you can be anonymous on Twitter, and the other part of Twitter is that on Facebook, I invite you to be my friend, and if you say yes, it's a mutual and reciprocal activity. I can see what you put on Facebook, you can see what I put on Facebook. On Twitter, they're not referred to as friends, they're referred to as followers. So either somebody follows you or you follow somebody else, and it is not necessarily reciprocal. So you could choose to go onto Twitter and you could follow a bunch of people and they might choose not to follow you. I saw a note from Don Armstrong. Please eliminate the speaker talking at the same time as Abby Stokes. Is there somebody else talking and you guys can hear them and I can't? Oh, Huey's answering something here. We're going to find out in a second. While Huey's typing, I'll keep on going with this idea. So with Twitter, it could be that you don't follow anybody and a lot of people follow you. So it's just not reciprocal. You guys get to decide how you want to do that. So let's look at this sort of the profile page on Twitter here that you would choose for whatever it is that you want to share. Again, you do have to give them an email address. You do have to choose a username, but it does not have to be your name. So I see if you guys aren't seeing that, Huey says no one's talking, and Judy's asking whether or not you're logged into track 1. Huey has a very good point there, Don, and then I'll get back. Be sure that that a video might not be running on a different web page. I don't hear anything over here, but you guys might be. Obviously, Don's hearing something. So this is the page that you get to decide about your notifications, about what you share on the profile, even what time zone you're in. So that's the page that you sort of fill out according to your own discretion. And this is giving you an idea of what it's like to look at the news feed on Twitter. This is my timeline. And so those people that you see, the top person and the second person are two people that I have chosen to follow on Twitter. And below that is Good Morning America. I follow them on Twitter. So this timeline fills up like the news feed in the same way it fills up on Facebook with other people's information. So you scroll through this to see the latest information that has been on the page. Now I want you to take a sort of look at this for a second here. We see an image of the person. You could choose to have that be a photograph of you if you want to. You do not have to. It could be a picture of an object if you wanted to, your cat. Their names, obviously some of them are using names that make sense and you know who it is, some of them are not. We also have this language that's sort of seen in this tweet. Let me go to the next page so you can sort of see it here. Up at the top, that's my image. I have just my mouth. I talk a lot. You'll see where I say talking with the folks at SeniorPlanet, .. #TechFun. I'm showing that to you because what we often hear is, what's a hashtag and how do we let people know we're talking about them on Twitter? Twitter is unique compared to Facebook in that you are limited with how many words you can use, actually characters you can use on Twitter. So you're limited to 140 characters. That means letters, numbers, spaces, you're limited to 140, which the brevity actually makes Twitter kind of more compelling in some ways than Facebook. So in order to accommodate that shorter thing, it's like using text messaging. There are abbreviations that people use. So first thing, let's address this at SeniorPlanet that you're seeing. Do you remember with CB radios? With CB radios, you chose a handle. Now, when I think I was in my early teens when CB radios were really popular, and my handle was Kitty Litter, and my best friend's handle was Terry Cloth. And so when we were talking to truckers, which we thought was just a riot, we'd get on there and we'd say Kitty Litter, Terry Cloth. What you're seeing here is the handle. This is an organization where I've spoken, SeniorPlanet. The handle for SeniorPlanet is at Senior Planet. I'm going to go back to that previous page. If you look, you'll see the handle for Kishusuka, I can't even say her name, is her name, or that could be her nickname. You get to choose your handle when you go on Twitter. The hashtag, which is that pound sign or the number sign, is what you use when you want to sort of have a topic be noticed in what you're talking about. So I was showing people how to use Twitter, and I sort of gave it the name of Tech Fun. Whenever there's something with a hashtag, it means that you can choose to search using those particular words. It's always together, even if it's separate words, to find other people discussing the same subject. So if you look up at the top of the page where you see the word tweet with what looks like a feather, and then there's my mouth, and then to the left of that it says search Twitter, that is where you would type in keywords using a hashtag for what it is you're interested in finding on Twitter. So people use that symbol, the hashtag, for creating a conversation around a specific topic. So it's interesting for me with Twitter. I use Twitter as kind of, I don't know if you guys remember Monarch Notes when you were in high school. That was sort of a cheat sheet for not reading the whole book. And I reveal myself as being a bad student. But that's what I sort of use Twitter for. I don't have time to look at all the tech magazines that come out and all the websites that you could look at. So instead, on Twitter, there are select people who write for those magazines or select magazines that I choose to follow on Twitter, like Mashable, which is a great website to go to for tech information. I follow them on Twitter because it's sort of a faster way to see what they're talking about. So for you guys, if you haven't ventured forth in Twitter, you know, the essential things are it's anonymous in many ways because you don't have to be who you say you are. It's not reciprocal necessarily. And you can choose to follow anyone who's on Twitter who's put themselves out there. So it could be that you follow a celebrity. It could be that you follow somebody who writes op-ed pieces that you're interested in. It could be you follow somebody in any field that interests you. And they don't necessarily, they're probably not going to follow you. It depends on how interesting you are. You know, it's funny. On Twitter, there was a gentleman whose father was kind of a curmudgeon. And he decided that every day his dad said something so funny that he would create a Twitter feed based on what his dad says. And so he called it, his handle was Shit Dad. I think it's, pardon my French, I think it's Shit Dad Says, I think is what it was. And it was so funny. Every day he put in something, and he ended up getting a book deal. And now Bill Shatner is playing him in, I think it's either a television series or a movie. I'm not sure which it is. So it's interesting how things get picked up on these different services, Twitter being one of them. So to me, Twitter is fast-moving, and it's brief in its nature, but it's a great way to sort of find out up to the minute what's happening, to me, in a slightly more global way, because with Facebook, I'm only really seeing what my friends are putting up, and here on Twitter, it could reach sort of a larger growing demographic. I was trying to catch a train not long ago in Long Island, and the train was a half an hour late, and of course I tried to get Long Island Railroad on the phone, and there was no way to get anybody to answer the phone. So instead, I went on Twitter, and I went to their Twitter page. I assumed their handle was at LIRR, which it was, and I actually got to see on their Twitter page why the train was delayed. Unfortunately, there had been a terrible accident on the track further down that I couldn't see, so I knew there was no hope of the next train coming, so I actually got to get in a taxi cab before anybody else did because they hadn't gone on the Twitter feed. So Twitter can be very up-to-the-moment information. I'm going to stop again to take a breath and take a sip of water. Before we talk about LinkedIn, if you're a good typist, you can type a little question here if there are any questions coming up. And I love the remark that somebody did about the problem with computers with an exclamation point. That is why we kick and scream, isn't it? You think it's easy with computers, but for even those of us like Don who knows what he's doing, sometimes it can be hard to do. So I'm going to assume there are no questions. I'm going to take my sip of water. There, you all could hear that. And now we will go on to talking about LinkedIn. Because to me, in many ways, between Oh, and somebody says Twitter's great for reaching out to and griping at companies. You're so right. And that's where I want to really, there's another talk I do, and at some point I will do this with you guys about making a difference with one click of your mouse. You do not understand the power you have with social networking, the number of people it reaches. If you want to get something done and writing a letter gets lost by the CEO of the company that you're ticked off at, it is where you want to go to get the word out there about what an injustice that's happened or some way that you have not been treated well. So I really think, social networking, whether you dislike the idea of it or not, it has a place for us because it's such a great way to get the word out there. So LinkedIn. LinkedIn, and somebody just said it can obviously it can be abused. And remember, just because you read it on Twitter doesn't mean it's true. You could lie on Twitter just like anybody else. So the front door test is a great way to not embarrass yourself. But you need to use a filtering system of wondering if what you're seeing is actually true. My birthday falls on May 1st. So yesterday was my birthday. Thank you for those of you that are saying silently to yourselves, happy birthday, Abby. It also was the day that Osama bin Laden was assassinated. So I went on Twitter to see if I had any birthday wishes. Oh, thank you. I went onto Twitter to see if I had any birthday wishes, and lo and behold, I see that Osama bin Laden had been assassinated. The first thing I did was then I went to CNN's website to see if they'd said something about it, and they hadn't. So I actually didn't believe it. In fact, it got on Twitter before it got on the national news, because they were probably trying to confirm whether or not it had happened. So it's important for you to be clear about what you read may or may not be true. So let's talk about LinkedIn with our not a huge amount of time that we have left here. LinkedIn, to me, thank you, Alan. LinkedIn, to me, is one of the most valuable social networking websites out there, especially if you know somebody who is seeking a job. Because LinkedIn's point is to be a social networking website for professionals. And that means that if you are seeking a job or you're seeking an employee or you want to find information about an industry that interests you, LinkedIn is the website that you should be going to, because the way LinkedIn works is you don't have followers, you don't have friends, you have connections. It is the blatant place where it's about connections. And the connections, it could be anybody. It's funny, on LinkedIn, I say yes to everybody because I figure it's a professional arena and I want everybody to sort of know who I am. On Facebook, I just have it be that it's friends on Facebook. And on Twitter, I sort of don't really care either. Thank you, Leah. So on LinkedIn, it's about where you can list your resume. People can give you references. People can cite certain specific skills that you have. So LinkedIn, it may not be a place that you want to join because you're retired probably, but if you know anybody who is seeking employment, LinkedIn is a must. At this stage of the game, if you're seeking employment and you don't have a resume on LinkedIn, it is perceived as not being particularly professional or up to date. So it's super duper important that you, if you know of anybody looking for a job, that you help them get on LinkedIn. I know some of you have gotten invitations to be on LinkedIn, or as a client called it the other day, why do I get all these invitations to LinkedIn? I don't know what LinkedIn is. I loved her for that. See you later, Vicki. So if you are getting invitations to LinkedIn and you feel sort of rude for not saying yes to them, don't worry about it. If you don't have an interest in seeing what's happening in a particular industry and you're not seeking employment or seeking an employee, there's no real reason for you to be on LinkedIn unless you have a reason to be there. So don't feel like just because you've gotten a ton of invitations, it's something that you need to say yes to. The truth is, a lot of those invitations were sent without the member of LinkedIn even knowing it. Because if you answer a question wrong at signing on to LinkedIn, what happens is they automatically send an invitation out to everybody in your address book, and they usually send it out twice. So it is very careful that as you're going along, you notice when they talk to you about your contacts, be sure that you're not giving them access to your contacts and they're going to send out a blanket invitation without you wanting them to send it out. So before we're finishing up here, I think we've got sort of our last 10 minutes going. I just want you to imagine, so you understand social networking and the importance of it. Tonight is a family reunion with everybody in your family meeting in Wisconsin. and you couldn't go because you did not want to miss APCUG's spring talk. So you are home with your computer now, but tonight you're going to turn on your computer at about 7 o'clock at night because that's when the reunion's happening. Your daughter couldn't go because she's in New York with a book deadline, and Uncle Charlie couldn't go because he broke his hip and he's still in the rehab center. But this evening you all turn on your computers and you all connect to Facebook because you are friends with different family members. Everybody else is in Wisconsin. Old, young, they're all there, including Aunt Ruthie, who's dancing the Macarena. She's had a lot of sangria. And somebody asks Aunt Ruthie if they can put her picture up on Facebook. And Aunt Ruthie says, sure. And her picture goes up on Facebook, and you instantly are able to type underneath that picture, tell Aunt Ruthie I love her. And then your daughter's able to type underneath that picture, tell Aunt Ruthie that I'm wearing the good luck sweater that she knit for me. I wear it whenever I have a deadline. And then Uncle Charlie's able to type, tell Aunt Ruthie as soon as my hip heals, I'll be dancing the Macarena with her. There's no other source of that kind of connection globally available to you with this technology. That's why social networking has the place it has, because it's such an amazing way to reach a great number of people. Now, I'm just going to run through this quickly. I invite you guys to come to my website, Ask Abby Stokes, and you'll see circled there that you can find me on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Pinterest. Just as an introduction for those of you that haven't seen the website yet, I'll flip through quickly here. There are 14 free videos on my website. Everything on the website's free. But these are videos that walk you through how to do specific tasks with your smartphone or your tablet that I thought would be helpful, as well as computers. And underneath each of them are the words, click here for printable instructions. And I have for you free printable instructions broken down by platform, iPhone, iPad, Android, whatever it is, so that you can follow on a piece of paper what you see on the video. I also now have a newsletter if you want to join it, and you can find me on Facebook. Or you can email me, because we haven't had a lot of, Aunt Ruthie will be embarrassed when she sobers up. Boy, you got that right, Francis. So we haven't had a time for questions here, but I welcome any and all questions or suggestions for videos of what you would like me to put online for you guys that's instructional. And now you see how you can reach me. And Huey, do we have enough time for some questions, or do we have to go off?
You've got maybe 2 minutes.
Okay.
Let's see if
so if anybody wants to type any questions, I see Francis. I recommend your book on computer classes. Thank you, Francis. I should email me and I will give you a sheet so you can actually get them at a discount for your students. There's a way that you can order them en masse, and then they can all benefit by that. A blast went out to LinkedIn to everybody in my address book. Oh, well, here's the problem, Star, whoever you are, at Computer Power Star. You just have to go to your address book and tell them you didn't mean to do that. It was just an unfortunate matter. You didn't notice there was a check mark in a question of whether or not you wanted everybody in your contacts to get it. So you just have to send them individual emails and apologize and tell them they have no obligation to join LinkedIn because they received that. It's a terrible thing. Unfortunately, it happens all the time. And I want to thank Judy. Thank you. I can't wait to see you very soon in June. Judy and I are getting together for the Southwest Computer Conference. Thank you, Annie. Is LinkedIn more for business than personal? Absolutely. That is the point of LinkedIn. It's for professionals on the internet. So if you have a business, you're seeking employment, or you're seeking employees, LinkedIn is where you should be going. Facebook is much more personal, and Twitter, because of its potential anonymity, isn't as personal, but it's not necessarily professional either. Leah, I'll see you in June as well. Look at all these people who are going to be there in San Diego, or not San Diego. It's now not in San Diego. It's up in Los Angeles. Awesome. Oh, thank you, Mary, for your kind words. Judy's typing something. She's going to correct me for anything that I've said. Yes, it's Cal Poly in Pomona. That's where we're all going to see each other in June.